What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Gooner channel, a channel 100% dedicated to the Arsenal, who, as we all know, are by far the greatest team the world has ever seen. Declan Rice has finally signed for Arsenal. I know it's been an on-off saga. It feels like it's been going on for ages. It hasn't. It really is only the 15th of July. But he did sign, as predicted, in time to leave for the razzmatazz portion of our pre-season schedule in the United States, with 3 big games coming up. What I wanted to talk about is the 5 what I think are fairly obvious reasons why he's chosen Arsenal. Now, of course, I'm not claiming any objectivity here at all. I am a huge Arsenal fan, and I do believe passionately that we are by far the greatest team the world has ever seen. Is it surprising that Declan didn't go to his boyhood club, Chelsea? Is it surprising that he didn't go to Bayern Munich? Is it surprising he didn't go to treble winners Manchester City? I'm not sure it's as surprising as all that when you put the factors together. Now, he has done an interview, and if you just listen to the things he's saying, then a lot of what I'm going to talk about is covering that and going over that in a bit more detail. But first and foremost, the reason to pick Arsenal over any of those other clubs is that there is a tradition and a proud history here, and the stature and status of a club like Arsenal that gives it a global reach. He talks about the special night in 1989 under George Graham. Of course, Arsenal go back far further than that. Having been promoted just after the First World War, Arsenal's the only team never to be relegated from the top flight. We have been the only ever present, successful in the 30s, the 50s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and let's hope the 20s. But with the size of the club comes this fan base. Declan Rice talked about it. He said that it wasn't until the rumours started to persist that he was coming to Arsenal and he was approached by people in London that he got a sense of just how many fans there are. He talks about trips abroad with Jack Wilshere and how Jack Wilshere, even though he was at West Ham, still had his Arsenal fans, and getting a sense of just how important our club is all around the world. And see how important you are as fans if you're not in the UK and you're wherever you may be. Massive love to you, because you are a part of the reason why a player like Declan Rice, a player of the stature of Declan Rice, would consider coming to Arsenal. It's just a huge club with a huge history. Kind of history that Chelsea don't have. Listen, I'm not a really old person, but I remember when they used to come to Highbury and we used to sing "You Won the League in Black and White," when their proudest trophy was the then Data Systems Cup. They spent more time in the second tier than they did in the top tier. They don't have the kind of history that we do. Neither do Man City, really. Although that'll change if they carry on as they are, which I don't think they will do. And I'm doing a video about that tomorrow, so stay tuned. So the first reason that Declan Rice chose Arsenal is reputation, history, status, stature. These are important things to a player when they put the shirt on. The second, and this is again what he talks about in his interview, what he's seen on the pitch over the last couple of years, how Arsenal have developed under Mikel Arteta and how they've become the kind of team that plays very attractive football again. That was one of the high points of the Wenger era. It wasn't just that we were winning well. We played with verve, we played with flair, we played with attacking guile, and that, I think you can say, is happening again. We scored 88 goals last season. That's an exciting prospect. Of course, the area we needed improvement is in defending, and a good number of the goals we conceded came down our left side, which is a kind of position that Declan Rice has made his own, defending the back four, but particularly on the left side of that. So he would have looked at the way we're playing, wanted to be part of that, and also felt that he could contribute, which takes me to point 3. The difference he can make in this story. Yes, you can go to Manchester City. Absolutely, you can go to Manchester City and, win another league, win 4 in a row. Okay, be the first Premier League team ever to win 4 in a row. But so what? Win the Champions League? Well, they've just done that. There's nothing that you as an individual can go to Manchester City and achieve that will really wow anyone. Obviously, everybody was talking about Manchester City coming in and saying you're guaranteed silverware. Look, let's be honest, you're never guaranteed silverware anywhere. You got to look at it and say you've got the best possible chance at Manchester City, but guarantee, long way from that. Joining Arsenal, you could see that even though Thomas Partey had a great start to the season, middle of the season, he faded pretty badly. Granit Xhaka has always been a hard-working, industrious player, asked to get forward in that 8 position and support the attack a little bit more. We lost a little bit of his defensive stability, and I don't think he was ever in the league of Declan Rice. So if you're Declan Rice and you're looking at what does this team need, exactly what I offer, which is not true at Manchester City, who have Rodri. It's not true at Bayern Munich, who have Kimmich. For a player to look at a team and see where they're going to fit in and understand that if he is able to make the difference and he can bring the Premier League to fans who have waited 20 years for it. He experienced the thrill of bringing a trophy to West Ham fans who'd waited 43 years. I think he knows the import of that. He's a highly intelligent person, and I think he understands that his personal brand, and not that I think he thinks in terms of his personal brand, but for his journey and his adventure, bringing the Premier League to Arsenal or the Champions League will mean so much more than it did to any of the clubs that we're talking about, whether it be Bayern or Man City or Chelsea, or even Man United for that matter, although I think it's going to be a while before they're challenging. Then there's a small case of his friends. He talked about how he'd been at Chelsea with Eddie Nketiah and they were let go at roughly the same time. He talked about how football is strange and you end up in these places, and that he'd always had a lot of love for Eddie and Eddie's dad. I think it's his involvement talking about, I think it's his friends in the England team like Ramsdale and Bukayo Saka, and he even mentioned Emile Smith-Rowe, have talked in glowing terms. Our ambassadors, not just them, but Jack Wilshere he knew at West Ham. People he's talked about speak glowingly of what it's like to be an Arsenal player. And we know as fans that once you're an Arsenal player, you're always an Arsenal player. You only have to look at Thierry Henry and Patrick Vieira, Dennis Bergkamp, Tony Adams. The list is endless and wonderful. But I think this had a huge impact on Declan Rice. If you have people you really get on with constantly telling you that the place they work is fantastic, it's going to be a draw. And that, I think, has to be credit to Arteta and his coaching staff for creating not just a winning mentality amongst players, not just a desire to work together and achieve a goal, but a familial atmosphere. The kind of place where, you know, when Kai Havertz is being shown around the stadium, they've already got pictures of his wedding on the big screens. The kind of welcome that Mikel Arteta gave Declan Rice and Jurrien Timber. That familial feel that Kai Havertz talked about, already feeling like he belongs. There are a team of players that aren't worried about Declan Rice coming in. They're thrilled by it. They aren't worried that Jurrien Timber's coming to take their place. They are thrilled by it. Competition. Competitors thrive on competition. And Declan is that kind of player, and he knows when he sees it. And I think he's seen it. Having that level of positivity constantly reinforced by the things people say about the club they're at, that's a huge reason. And then finally, let's be blunt, the alternatives are not necessarily as good. Looking at Chelsea, it is chaos. They're not in the Champions League, and who knows what impact Todd Bowley's era is going to have on Chelsea. And I don't think that if you're looking to compare Pochettino with Arteta, I don't think, listen, I know Pochettino's had longer in the job and he's actually won silverware, but he did it at Paris Saint-Germain, and he didn't last at Paris Saint-Germain for a good reason. So I'm sceptical about Poch at Chelsea. Time will tell. But Manchester United, even with your best friend there, no one knows who owns Manchester United. There is an awful lot of dead wood up there. The facilities aren't as good, and it's miles from home. Let's not discount that. I know I don't think it's the big deal. It's not one of my 5 reasons, but I don't think he wanted to leave. I don't think he wanted to leave London, and now he doesn't have to. Manchester City must have been tempting. Everybody thought about it the same way when Manchester City came in. On the face of it, this is an indomitable team that seems to win when they want to all the time. They cleared up the treble. They look on course to do what no one has ever done before, which is win 4 Premier Leagues in a row. They have the immense ability of Haaland up front to score goals at record-breaking pace. But they also have Rodri. And much as I love Declan Rice, and I think he's a fantastic signing for us, not just because of his on-the-field ability, but because of his character and personality, his leadership qualities. But they do have Rodri at Man City. And arguably he's 4 or 5 years older, and he is, I think, that far ahead of Declan Rice. He is incredibly solid. And unless Man City are playing a double pivot, which they do, it's hard to see Declan Rice coming in there. There has to be the apocryphal story of Calvin Phillips there at some point, because he goes to Man City for big money and he plays hardly at all. I think he played in total 2 matches in the Premier League worth of minutes. Pep. Can Pep have the pull of Mikel Arteta if Pep's contract runs out in 2025? I haven't seen any discussions at all being had about him extending. And it looks like, at first glance, they may lose more than a quarter of their first team. İlkay Gündoğan, Pep's best friend, lives next door to Pep, was brought in by Pep. They've played a lot together, they've worked a lot together, even İlkay went. Gündoğan, why did he go? Kyle Walker, today, looks like he's on his way to Bayern Munich. Bernardo Silva's been talking about leaving for 2 or 3 years. Jesus and Zinchenko went last year. Laporte looks like he's going. There are players leaving Man City. When you look at it, it's about a quarter of their playing time last season. It looks like it might be leaving if Riyad Mahrez is allowed to leave. And if he's not, well, then you have Riyad Mahrez there, who kind of a bit ticked off not playing the finals and not really getting a look in at the end of the season. Is the atmosphere at Manchester City quite what it's been? Are all the players looking for a new level of motivation? Could a player like Declan Rice really come in and fit in straight away? In short, his alternatives were not that great. Yes, you could go to Bayern Munich, but they've got Kimmich. You know, he's a hero at Bayern Munich, and for very good reason. He's an outstanding footballer. And, you know, Bundesliga is not the Premier League. So why has Declan Rice chosen Arsenal? It's tempting just to say because he can see what we can all see, that we are the greatest team the world has ever seen. But I think the reality is he's heard fantastic things about it, what he's seen with his own eyes, the history and tradition, the lack of alternatives, and the difference he can make. And he will make that difference. I've never been more confident in a player joining Arsenal. I remember being this confident when Dennis Bergkamp arrived, and then, of course, it was almost 10 games before he scored, and everyone was talking about him as a flop. I was this confident when Ian Wright arrived, and he scored in his debut, and then a hat-trick on his league debut, so that wasn't difficult. I was this confident when we signed Sol Campbell from Tottenham. This, I think, is as close to a perfect signing as it gets for Arsenal, because we went from an era under Emery where we were talking about having 5 captains to really not having 5 captains. The big question that has arisen since it's become clear Declan Rice is joining is, can he be captain? Well, look, I can absolutely see it. I can absolutely see him being captain, maybe a captain and vice-captain, but I think Martin Odegaard has done everything asked of a captain. And I don't see any reason to change that. So I don't know what's going to happen down the line, but let's hope that they're both fighting over who gets to lift the Premier League. Let's hope that they got one hand each on the handle of the Champions League trophy. I believe that even without Declan Rice, we're on the right trajectory. Even without Declan Rice joining Arsenal, Man City is still not the team that they were. Even if Declan Rice hadn't joined Arsenal, I still think it's going to be close next season, just because of all the reasons I've given that Man City may not be the force to be reckoned with. As I said, there is a video tomorrow about that. Today is a day of celebration. Today is a day where we went out and got the exact player we wanted despite huge competition. Today is a day where we finally got our man. We beat off interest from some of Europe's elite clubs. And he made a choice to join Arsenal, which I don't think he's going to regret for 1 minute. Welcome to the Arsenal, Declan Rice, baby. Looking forward to seeing you in the Arsenal shirt in the pre-season friendlies, hopefully, and certainly in the Community Shield against Manchester City, where we get our first chance to show them that we aren't just a one-season wonder. Anyway, I'm off to watch all the other videos around this subject and just bask in the glory where we got exactly who we wanted at Arsenal. Until I speak to you again, be lucky. Lots of love.